A once-in-a-lifetime talent is the best possibility I have ever personally assessed. Having so much talent and kicking someone is just unfair. He has been dubbed one of the top NBA prospects ever and is simply a generational talent. He is a unicorn. People don't discuss him as a prospective all-star. Instead, they open the debate with the idea of a future MVP. For an 18-year-old who has never even participated in an NBA game, it is some incredibly high praise. The comments, however, are not directed at LeBron. These criticisms are all directed towards Victor Wembanyama, a 2023 draft prospect. Hello, this is Hoops Network Incorporated, and in this video, we'll see a player whose potential makes him the top NBA prospect of all time, according to scouts. However, scouts must remember one thing. Ask yourself who the greatest NBA player in history is right now. More than 7 feet 3 inches tall? Yao Ming, Ralph Sampson, Rick Smits, and perhaps Vitas as a bonus are just a few names that come to mind. And that's because even in a league full of giants, there just hasn't been many players this tall. In fact, throughout the NBA's 75-year history, there have only been 26 players who were 7 feet 3 inches or taller. Of those 26 players, only 3 of them are currently in the NBA, and only 3 others made the Basketball Hall of Fame. See, despite size and length being one of the most valuable assets in the game of basketball, there is such a thing as being too tall for the game. At what point does a player have too much height? Well, if history tells us anything, it's that the threshold is about 7'1". I know it's a rather specific number, but time and time again, we are shown that anyone above 7 is bound to have significant, if not career-ending injuries and health issues due to their incredible size. Out of these 26 players, really only about 7 of them went on to have notable careers. And of those 7 players, 5 of them either missed entire seasons due to injuries or had to retire due to injuries. You'd actually have a hard time finding more than a few players who were taller than 7'1" who didn't have careers plagued by injuries. There seems to be a specific limit to how big a player can be before their size quickly becomes a debilitating detriment. And I say all of this for one reason. This kid, 7 foot 3 inch 18-year-old Victor Wembanyama, a player that possesses all the physical tools and skills to be a once-in-a-generation talent, but may just be too tall for his own good. Victor is already being anointed as the best NBA prospect since LeBron James 20 years ago, which sounds like a massive reach until you watch the kid play. See, during the past few decades, some of the best NBA prospects have been selected. This skill has caused clubs to try and lose as many games as they can in order to secure Shaq in 1992, Tim Duncan in 1997, LeBron James, and, 03, Anthony Davis in 2012, with talents of this caliber. There's never really any debates as to who's going number 1 overall. In fact, in some cases, if these prospects were available for the draft sooner, they would have gone first overall before they were even eligible. Ron Artest is on record saying LeBron could have played in the NBA. By the time he was just 15 years old, former NBA player and longtime NBA exec Danny Ainge said there are only 4 or 5 players in the NBA that I wouldn't trade to get LeBron right now. This was back in 2002 when LeBron was a 17-year-old high school junior. Of course, not all ultra-elite NBA prospects are ready to make the jump right away. A few years ago, Marvin Bagley was far and away the best recruitment class of 2018. So to expedite his journey to the NBA, he reclassified to the class of 2017 and was still their number 1 recruiting country. But despite his glaring talents and NBA readiness at such a young age, he has yet to make a real impact at the NBA level. Because no matter how incredible a young prospect is, in the world of sports, there is no such thing as a guarantee. But rarely, maybe once or twice in a decade, a prospect comes along and nearly reaches that unattainable status. The 2023 NBA Draft will feature one of these generational prospects in. Victor Wembanyama. Victor has been in the spotlight for quite a while now. And not even 24 hours after the 2022 NBA Draft, attention already began to shift to next year's draft and the ultimate prize, the 2023 NBA Draft, and formerly being labeled as the Wembanyama Sweepstakes. By now, most of y'all have probably heard of Victor or seen clips of him playing. The first thing that stands out is his absurd height and length. 7 feet 3 inches tall with a 7 foot 10 inch wingspan. For some perspective, here's 6 foot 4 inch 2022 NBA Draft D, Jaden 4. Here's 7 foot 1 inch Chet Holmgren. And over here is Victor Wembanyama, making Chet look like an undersized shooting guard. But many skeleton onlookers have said that Victor isn't 7'3". He's actually closer to 7'5", which just sounds like a bunch of speculation. But you see this guy right here. This is Zach Ed. Zach's official listed heights is 7'4", and Victor is a giant, but his incredible stature isn't nearly what makes him a potentially generational talent. It's what he does with it. Quick feet, even quicker hands agility that is visually startling for a player of his size. Despite being a skyscraper he can take defenders off the dribble with an explosive first step or use an arsenal of moves to create separation in ISO situations. The kid is 7'3" and can create shots for himself anywhere on the court. Similar to Kevin Durant, his high release on his jump shots makes them virtually unguardable. Although he's not nearly the outside shooter Durant is, he does have an inside game far beyond his years where he uses a variety of combinations involving spin moves, pump fakes and fadeaways, which keeps the defense in a constant state of gambling like a perpetual game of choose your poison. Ultimately, at the moment his strengths are in the open floor and on defense. With his speed, quick reaction and size, Victor is virtually an automatic bucket and transition. He has the situational awareness and athleticism to create transition opportunities out of thin air and on defense. He already possesses world-class instincts and timing, and his insane length allows him to seemingly be in two places on the court at once. However, Victor, just like every other prospect that came before him, does have his weaknesses. But all of these weaknesses are things that with the right development can be solved. His slim frame is shoddy decision-making, at times gambling on defense, and relying on his length to make up for it, the usual weaknesses of most young mega talents. But none of that matters because Victor isn't just a presumably number 1 overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft. He's the draft pick of the decade. According to SB Nation's Ricky O'Donnell, the last prospect this big, fluid, and this comfortable with the ball in his hands might be a young Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. One anonymous NBA scout said Victor can go bare defensively, Porzingis offensively with Yogesh-like passing skills. Another NBA scout said when you see something you've never seen before, it can feel like your eyes are playing tricks on you, and many other scouts shared the same opinion, most of them struggling to even come up with an appropriate comp for Wembanyama, since quite frankly, there has never been a player like him in the history of the NBA. Last summer, Victor faced off against Chet Holmgren during the Uniting FIBA World Cup final. And despite Victor being a year younger than Chet, one NBA scout said, "Never have I seen Chet Holmgren overshadowed physically like he was last year." Whatever the two met, just off of sheer potential, Victory is one of the most sought-after prospects we've ever seen. But there's just one small catch the scouts are missing. Actually, it's one massive 7'3" catch. Victor is too damn tall. As we previously touched on, the history of extremely tall and sustainably great big men is very, very short. No matter how talented a freakishly tall player is, no matter how enticing their physical tools are, at a certain point all that heights will eventually become a detriment to their game and their longevity. This trend of injury-prone ultra-big men has become so prevalent that it isn't the exception. It's practically the rule. Believe it or not, there are only 5 active NBA players who are taller than 7 feet. And of these 5 players, only 3 of them are taller than 7, to Kristaps Porzingis being easily the most talented of the 3, but outside had an injury-riddled Porzingis who was the last player taller than 7'1" and made a real impact in the NBA. Stop. Don't even bother trying to come up with an answer. It's Yao Ming, who had his last all-star caliber season nearly 15 years ago, which means that this century has featured 2 players 7 feet 2 inches or taller who played at an elite level, and both of them have had their careers derailed due to injuries. It's virtually inevitable. Since the 2000 NBA draft, here are the percentages of games missed from lottery picks sorted by hype. Throughout these 3 height ranges, there seems to be no correlating factor between heights and injury. Generally speaking, players ranging from below 6 feet all the way up to 611 experience injuries at a very similar frequency. But lottery picks from 7 feet to 7'1" have missed 26.2% of all their potential NBA games. This is a staggering amount. Now I would add another height range of 7 to and above, but there just hasn't been enough NBA prospects in that height range. The last time a player that tall was selected with a lottery pick in the NBA draft was Kristaps Porzingis in 2015. Before Kristaps, you have to go back to 2009 when the Memphis Grizzlies drafted 7'3" and shushing to beat with the second. Overall pick 1 spot ahead of James Harden, 5 spots ahead of Stephen Curry, and 7 spots ahead of DeMar DeRozan. Hashem stayed relatively healthy, but spent 5 seasons bouncing around to numerous teams and finished his career with averages of just 2 points and 2 rebounds on 10 minutes per game, but believe it or not, rushing to beat actually holds an NBA record for the tallest and highest drafted player to ever be sent down to the dealer. I swear I'm not making that up. That's a real fact. And to find the next absurdly tall lottery pick, you have to go all the way back to the 2002 NBA draft. When the Houston Rockets drafted Yao Ming was the #1 overall pick, who to my estimation is the greatest player over 7 feet 2 inches in NBA history. To this day, Yao Ming is criminally underrated. The only thing bigger than he was were the standards put upon him coming into the NBA, and he lived up to that standard, but unfortunately, the height that made him an unstoppable force on the courts was also the cause of his retirement smack dab in the middle of his prime at the age of 30. Finding a young talented player with this much size is a feat in its own right. Finding a young player with this much size with the expectation that he has a long and healthy career would be nothing short of a miracle. To say the odds are stacked against this young man would be an understatement. We've just rarely seen any player pull it off. But that's the thing. Victor isn't like any other player. He can protect the paint like Gobert, create offense like Porzingis, run the floor like Giannis, and pass like Vitas, all in one package. With a talent like this, teams will gladly take all the risk for a shot at the ultimate reward if he can stay healthy. Wembanyama has the opportunity and the skills to be a player unlike anything the NBA has ever seen. So with that being said, let the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes begin.